Welcome to Inside the Skev, and I'm your host, Aaron Masliansky. Today we've got a special Skevinson neighbor guest of mine, Sam Glassenberg. Sam is the founder of Level Ex, which is a super cool company here in Chicago that does, it's basically a video game for training, for surgery, for medical, and it's pretty awesome. So Sam, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Great to be here.
Yeah. To give you a little background to the audience, Sam and I have known each other for a while. We went to college together.
We did.
We are friends.
Yes.
And we're neighbors. And, it's pretty... And also, Sam is from the future. So...
and not that, apocalyptic future. The future we're all excited to...
Right, until...
To eventually, right.
Yeah. And I think you're kind of writing the future. And, part of it is through this technology that you work with. But really, it's the course of it has been video games for you, right?
Yeah. I've spent my career in the video game business. I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky.
You are.
Well, here, yeah. I mean, we're here in my office. You can see some of the artifacts. Yeah, I started my career at LucasArts. My first job was flying spaceships for Star Wars video games. Literally, like at Lucasfilm between the release of Star Wars Episode 1 and Episode 2.
And did you play a lot of video games as a kid?
I played video games as a kid.
Yeah.
And actually, the way I ended up in the industry was I did animation as a hobby starting in high school. And my intention was to get a job in feature film, like working at Pixar or DreamWorks or one of those places. I actually applied at Lucasfilm. I applied at ILM. So I sent in my reel of animations and applied on the film side of Lucasfilm and actually was offered the job at LucasArts, which is the video game side.
How'd they pick you?
I think they said something like they had received 2,500 reels for the position. But that in those days you'd submit it on a VHS tape. So I started out as an animator, so I was an artist. So literally what they care about is the quality of your reel, right? The quality of your example animation work. So I just sent in projects I'd been doing for fun. And they really liked it.
And that was during college that you sent that in?
Yeah, that was during college. And then, it was, I was hired onto a team of artists. I was the only actual engineer by background. So at Illinois, I studied engineering. And so, that was my, and in the industry, I've worked now as an artist. I've worked as a software developer, as an engineer, as a manager, and, now as a suit.
You are a suit. Actually, you're not wearing a suit.
Yeah, even though I very rarely wear a suit.
Everyone can see it. So when you were in college, though, you're working at Lucas, and how did you do that? I mean, did you were traveling back and forth a lot, weren't you?
Well, yeah. So I did. I actually consulted for them for a while, but then I was there full time for a while. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I was hired. I was hired by Microsoft. So when I was at Microsoft, I spent most of my time on the DirectX graphics team. So I basically ran a technology team at Microsoft whose job it was to basically, my job was to build the Matrix, like figure out what do we want video games to be able to achieve visually, 10 years down the road, and like what do we need to do to make that happen?
Yeah.
What do we need to do? What do we need from a hardware perspective? What do we need like from an art tools perspective, from a software perspective, from a math perspective to be able to like make video games on, future Xboxes and PCs, make them look real?
Do you consider yourself a futurist?
I think about the future as much as the next guy.
Yeah, but that was your job to figure out things from 10 years and look at like what you're doing now. It's very forward thinking, and even your lifestyle is more futurist in a way because you are
the solar panels and
you have solar panels on your house, the electric car, which inspired me to get mine. You're around the world a lot, and most people aren't like you.
So actually, my job at Microsoft actually was interesting. I've done a lot of this. So at Microsoft, video games ride what's called Moore's Law, right? Which is, we call it, compute power doubles every 18 months, meaning like every 18 months, computers can basically do more math than they could 18 months ago. Now, for those of us that use our computers every day, like Microsoft Word hasn't gotten any faster in the last 10 years, right?
Right.
I don't know why. But video games, if you look at video games from 10 years ago versus video games of today, right? Like, 10 years, they look real.
Yeah.
Video games today look almost indiscernible from like the highest quality animated films.
Have they passed the uncanny valley?
Yeah. So that was part of my job, was figuring out how do we get across the uncanny valley. And we definitely have. And so, but part of figuring out how to do that is like watching that curve, right? So understanding, like an example. So one of the things, so when I was at Microsoft, I would, once a year, we would put together, we'd have graphics advisory boards. We'd bring in like the top graphics minds from across the industry to figure out, all right, what do we want to be doing on a 5-year time frame? Because that's how long it takes to design hardware. And to do things like, one of the things we'd want to do is have more realistic characters. So we would look at who has the most realistic character in film today. Yeah. We would bring in, for example, like Bayrate, who designed Golem for Lord of the Rings, right, which was the most realistic computer-generated character at the time. When you were making a movie, you had hours to generate each frame. But what we could do is we could look at Moore's Law and say, all right, well, if we look at compute power doubling every 18 months, at what point are we going to have enough compute power to be able to do Golem in real time, right, at 30 frames a second? So we can have an interactive Golem character that really comes to life, that you can interact with as a player in a game. Once we did that math, we said, okay, well, what does the hardware need to support to be able to do that? What are the art tools that video game artists are using need to be able to do in order to be able to create a character that comes to life like that? So that was sort of part of what we were doing, is sort of how do you take the trends that we've seen over the last 20 years and predict where it goes 10, 20 years from now?
And then would you help develop that hardware, or just the software to be able to work with that future hardware?
So that was, in DirectX, we were in the middle of everything.
Right.
So basically, we were the layer between the games and the hardware. So we would basically define, what the hardware needed to do. And then companies like NVIDIA and Intel and AMD and all these companies were creating hardware that would do that. So the features that we designed and defined on the DirectX team, immediately would sort of make its way into PCs for PC gaming and would make it into the next console. And then eventually all that stuff eventually makes its way onto your phone, which is what we're using here at Level X. So, years later, these features, right, that, we're using to make video games look real on a game console, well, now you have it on your iPhone. So what we're doing at Level X is we're figuring out how can we utilize that capability to capture the challenges of the practice of medicine, right? Mm-hmm. So how can we take some of the most difficult, rare, challenging cases, for example, surgical cases, right, and allow you to try your hand at those cases on your phone, right?
Is that because the phone is so much more powerful now that you can render?
Exactly. So now we can do, part of what we've developed here are ways to do, computational fluid dynamics on a phone. So you can recreate, the movement of blood and, water and other fluids, the simulation of soft tissue, right? So you can, move tissue around and cut it and it all behaves realistically. We just... recreating, simulating X-rays, right? So, for example, we just launched a cardiology game. We have 1 in 4 interventional cardiologists in the country playing it. It's played entirely under X-ray.
1 in 4 of all cardiologists?
Of all interventional cardiologists in the country playing the game.
Wow.
It's played under X-ray. So literally on the phone, right, using this hardware and the technology on the phone, we're recreating X-rays penetrating through all these different, bone, muscle, skin, all these tissues in order to recreate what it's like to, navigate guide wires through a live beating human heart.
Oh my God.
We're having a lot of fun.
Yeah, you are. That definitely hits home with that type of training. So, do you think that you've saved lives already with the work that you guys do?
We have over 500,000 medical professionals playing our games now. If you do the math, they're treating tens of millions of patients, if not more. We know that the first 100 or 200 cases that a medical professional handles of any type, right, diagnostic or interventional, the outcomes aren't as good as the next 100 or 200, right? That's just because you learn through practice. In as much as we can help doctors sharpen their skills by practicing on virtual patients beforehand, the idea is, how do you get them? Like, one of the reasons why you need to do that 100 or 200 cases is not because you really need that much practice, but that you need to do 200 cases in order to encounter all the 1 in 100 stuff.
Right,
that
and
happens.
You create those random situations in your game.
Exactly. The advantage of game technology is we can recreate all those scenarios. So we can recreate the rare scenario where you're removing a polyp and all of a sudden you don't realize it's embedded on a blood vessel and it starts gushing blood. Right? What do you do? Well, if it's the first time you've ever encountered it on a live human being, right, you might freeze or, you might do the wrong thing. Here you're able to try different approaches. Let me try using the coagulator. Let me try injecting epinephrine. Let me try spraying water, use a hemoclip, try all the different approaches and see the outcomes and really build your confidence in it, right? That's what we can do using video game technology. And you can also, our games are, you can earn CME credit toward renewing your license by playing a number of the levels in these games. So you can literally, earn continuing medical education credit
by playing a game.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. I mean, was that because you had a pretty successful video game company before this? Was the ability to be able to save lives on a massive scale through this venture the motivation for you to really step into it?
This company was started by accident. Although I've spent my career in the video games industry, I come from a long line of doctors. My grandfather was a famous doctor. Actually, that behind me is his old microscope and his black bag.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that he would, I think, carry around rural Saskatchewan when he was what
was his name?
Physician. Samuel Vaisra. He's who I'm named after.
Wow.
When he moved to the States, he was chief editor of the Journal of the American Medical Association. So he was a doctor.
It was a big deal.
My parents are doctors. As you know, my wife is a doctor. I have aunts and uncles.
Saved my wife many times.
My wife is an excellent doctor.
Yes.
You should put her on your show.
I think I will.
Anyway, I come from a long line of doctors, and I'm sort of the black sheep of the family that never went to medical school. But
you'll save more lives than all of them combined.
Well, I wouldn't. I wouldn't go that far. Let's remember, I'm still making video games.
Okay.
So back in 2012, my father, he's an anesthesiologist, and he said, all right, Sam, I give up. You're not going to medical school. Put all this video game nonsense to good use. Make me a game to train my colleagues to do a fiber optic intubation. It's a technique that you only use on sort of rare and difficult scenarios. So even experienced anesthesiologists, he said, he's seen them struggle with it if they haven't done enough cases. He goes, I don't want to drag anybody to a simulation center. Just make me something where they can practice on their iPhones. So fine. Literally out of guilt.
It's a powerful thing.
Guilt is a powerful force.
Yes.
So I sat down for 3 weekends and I threw together this little game that I uploaded to the App Store, simply because I was too busy running a video game company. We haven't talked about that company yet, but video game company making games for Hollywood movies. So I was busy doing that. So I said, I don't have time to install it on
like Hot Tub Time Machine.
Right. Well, and Hunger Games and
Okay.
Mission Impossible. I had a lot of fun making the Hot Tub Time Machine video game.
Pretty awesome.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, I take this game and I upload it to the App Store because, I can't install it on his residents' iPads one by one. This way I just give them a link and they can download it on their own. I don't think about it again. 2 years later, he calls me. He goes, hey, Sam, how many people downloaded the game? I go, man, I don't know how many of your friends downloaded your game. I'll check for you. And I went and I checked, and we had 100,000 doctors, nurses, and airway specialists who'd been playing this game.
That's it must have floored you.
Yeah, I had by accident created one of the most popular medical simulation training tools ever. So at that point, I Google it and I discover, unbeknownst to me, they've been doing efficacy studies on this thing at various institutions around the world that shows it actually improves physician performance. So that was the accidental motivation for starting Level X. So Level X officially started at the end of 2015.
Okay.
So the company's almost 4 years old. We now have over 70 employees.
It's a real company.
We have, and then some.
Yeah.
We have 4 games in the App Store.
Which ones?
So in Airway X for anesthesia, Gastro X for gastroenterology, Pulm X for pulmonology, Cardio X for cardiology, and a number more in development. We're working with a wide range of leading medical societies. We just announced a few weeks ago a partnership with Trish to build we received a large grant to build a framework for NASA for space health. Basically get our platform running in zero gravity to not only recreate difficult cases on Earth, but difficult cases for training astronauts for the crazy things they might encounter on the way to Mars.
Did you ever think in a million years you'd be doing a project for NASA?
I hadn't even, the thought had not crossed my mind. It's very interesting. Like when NASA, when Trish and NASA approached us, I didn't even realize the problem.
Yeah.
So things like the human heart changes shape after extended periods of time in microgravity. So, imagine the following scenario, right? You're 6 months into the Mars mission, right? You're on your way, you're in space. All of a sudden, one of the astronauts, grabs his chest and rolls over and, passes out. Of course, it's probably going to be the flight surgeon because that's the one. That's how it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then, okay, what do? You grab the ultrasound, right? Because that's the only sort of real time imaging that you really have. You can't put an MRI or a CT in space. So you start, looking at the heart, but the heart changes shape. So, is the thing you're looking at, right, an indication that something's wrong, or is it normal? And remember, depending on where you are along the journey, there can be a 40-minute round trip to send a message back to Earth. So, today on the International Space Station, if there's a problem, you can have a cardiologist who's sitting on the ground and saying, okay, astronaut, move the ultrasound probe 10 degrees to the right, twist it around, right? You can direct you in real time. You can't do that on the way to Mars. So the astronauts need to be trained. But astronaut training is extremely limited. Like, their time is booked.
Right. They're learning how to be in space.
Exactly. For years, they need to learn about the navigation, all the systems on the ship, how everything works, how to deal with all the different crazy scenarios that might occur. Like, they don't have time for thorough emergency medical training. And so the idea here is create a platform and a framework that would enable us to, not, the same way we train doctors here on Earth to deal with difficult scenarios, train astronauts and also be able to train them in space as well.
How do you know what the conditions are going to be like and in space? How do you know how it affects everything with no gravity for that long? Is it just based on data from astronauts being on the space station?
Yeah, so it's based on, decades of data collected from astronauts in space. They're also, when we hear about them doing experiments on the ISS, these are the kinds of experiments they're doing, right, to understand the impact on the body. That you heard the recent twin experiment where they sent one identical twin into space to compare the physiological changes. And then they also take that data at NASA to create simulated models to, try to model how the heart behaves, that would cause this, the physiological changes. And so we're taking just the same way that when we're capturing difficult cases here on Earth, we're taking data from doctors. Right. Most of our game content is real cases that doctors have submitted, right, where they'll encounter a difficult case.
They submit that to you, like the case study and everything?
Exactly. So doctors will, you encounter a rare difficult case in the OR or in the clinic, once in a lifetime case. You'll take photos, maybe video, maybe you have some scan data. And, under normal, before Level X, you would submit that as an abstract to a conference or a medical journal. Now you can submit it to us as well, and we'll convert that into an interactive patient case, so your tens of thousands of colleagues can try different approaches to get the best outcome. We're using that same technology to be able to use simulated data from NASA, from their models, to be able to recreate in real time cases that astronauts in training can eventually be able to interact with.
That's amazing. So in addition to the games that you have, can people see the visualizations of those case studies? Will you do that as like a service?
Oh yeah, I mean, sometimes we'll include sometimes we might include some of that data. So we might include like the X-ray, for example, from the case, or the patient vitals, or the patient call the patient history. Mm-hmm. So we might actually include that in the game as sort of the introduction.
Now, if people want to play these games, what's the cost to do that?
Everything's available for free. So all the games are available to download for free from the App Store.
Wow. And do you have, so right now you're in Apple and Android on those app stores. Are you also going to be on different platforms, VR or anything like that? Oh,
yeah. I mean, we already have a bunch of the content running in VR. We've brought thousands of medical professionals through our VR experiences. Mm-hmm. The beauty of game technology, the running joke is it runs on if you could put a screen on a toaster oven, they'd make games for it. So video game technology runs on a wide range of platforms. So yeah, we run on iOS and Android, but we also run on a multitude of VR and AR headsets. You can you walk out there, you can see them all around the office.
I see people like playing and they got, the VR goggles on, but they're actually designing the game, right?
Correct. So we've got, Magic Leaps and HTC Vives and Oculus and probably a few things in there that haven't necessarily been announced yet.
You're just playing video games all day. Do you plan to cover the entire human body for all the different games and things like that?
So yeah, we're making our way through all the major medical specialties. Mm-hmm. So so essentially we have demand from doctors in all major specialties. In fact, we actually had, I think, thousands of cardiologists playing our other games before we even launched in cardiology. Like they're removing nails from people's airways and doing colonoscopies, waiting for us to release in cardiology. So the same is true for a multitude of other specialties. So we have demand from everything, and doctors are constantly coming to us with cases and, hey, we want this in our specialty. These are the things we'd love you to feature. We're constantly getting that feedback, and that feedback is driving our future roadmap. We can't build this stuff fast enough.
Has being in Chicago been a big help for you because of the large medical community here?
Yeah, I mean, Level X has been dubbed I forget which Chicago journal called us this, but we've been dubbed the deep dish hot dog of Chicago high tech because we combine the city's pedigree in gaming. The video games industry actually started in Chicago.
Really?
This is not well known. So it started with pinball. Right?
That was in Chicago?
Started with WMS. This all started in Chicago.
Wow.
And even today, Mortal Kombat is still made here. Same with Golden Tee. So there's always been a huge or a large gaming ecosystem in Chicago. Bungie, the makers of Halo, was started here. It was acquired by Microsoft and moved to the West Coast. Same with FASA. But Warner Brothers has a big studio here. Wargaming has a big studio here. There are a number of other independent studios. So there's always been a really sort of innovative game development community here in Chicago, on top of what is probably the best healthcare ecosystem in the country. You've got all the major medical societies are here, multiple pharma and med device companies, all the major medical conferences are here at McCormick Place. And we have just this incredible network of hospitals. I mean, literally.
Training hospitals.
I mean, exactly. Academic hospitals, University of Chicago, Northwestern, you've got North Shore and Rush. Everybody's here,
and you're working with all of them.
At any point during the day, you've got a number of doctors here in the office, whether they're play testing new cases or new games, or literally standing over an artist's shoulder saying, "Oh no, that tumor should be squishier. Swell that up. That should bleed more." We're ultimately building content for them. They're the ones who are going to tell us whether it's credible or not. We have hundreds of physician advisors that we're working with across a range of specialties in Chicago and outside of Chicago. Yeah. But obviously, if they're in Chicago, it's great because they can just come over.
That's amazing. Now, if somebody wants to get into the gaming industry doing what you're doing, I mean, what advice do you have for them?
So the beauty of it today, if 20 years ago, right, if you wanted to get in the games industry, the tools to make games were very expensive. Mm-hmm. You needed very high-end hardware. You couldn't even get access to the development tools to be able to make Nintendo games and things back in those days.
What was it? Like just computers? Or?
Yeah, I mean, they called them dev kits, right? They're sort of special development kits because you can't just install software on a Nintendo, right? You would have to use a special version of it. And nowadays, all the tools are available for free. I mean, as a student, you want to get into this, you can go download Unity, you can download Unreal, just start making games. These are the tools that we're using, right? Yeah. You can go download the art tools. You can go download the audio tools. Like, it's all just there. And on YouTube, there's a huge library of content that'll explain to you exactly how to do it with, online forums and documentation and everything else. So if you want to get into it, you can just sit down and start researching and learning and playing around with the tools and start making games. That's the best way to do it.
And that builds your portfolio, so then you can go work at a company and show what you've done.
Exactly. Yeah. Ultimately, it comes down to your portfolio. If you're a student and, you've got, you can demonstrate hey, I sat down with my friend who's an artist and my friend who's a designer and my friend who's really into audio. And, this is the game that we created. Yeah. And it's fun. Even if it doesn't look spectacular, if it's fun, or if it, does look spectacular, but maybe doesn't have a lot of content, right? A game studio will recognize that talent and eagerly hire.
That's awesome. And do you have interns or people like that? So where you have students coming in here to learn about that?
We do. Yeah. So we're smaller, so we don't have as formal a program as, let's say, a Microsoft.
Right.
But we do have interns that work here throughout the year in different departments: art, QA, medical.
Yeah, you have everything here. What do you think is your vision for the future of this company?
So, I imagine a future where doctors are learning about new techniques, new devices, how to deal with difficult scenarios, mm-hmm. and they're not having to do it on live patients, right? They're doing it on their own time on their phone, right? Whether that is dealing with a complex surgical scenario, or even how to, deal with a difficult diagnosis, or how to manage, a complex patient over time, with multiple comorbidities and, balancing drugs that might have side effects. Learning all of this, practicing this, not, on live human beings, but, on, using video game mechanics and video game technology on the phone they have in their pocket. And while they're doing it, they're earning continuing medical education credit, so they can, renew their license. And, at the same time, and this goes not just in the U.S., but worldwide, right?
Sure.
So doctors all over the world, especially in developing countries where you don't have $80 million simulation centers, and there's a real need for, trained healthcare professionals, they all have smartphones. Yeah. And, as you can see, Level X technology will run on smartphones that are 3-4 years old, right? So, there's an opportunity to disseminate these best practices all over the world simultaneously.
Yeah, it could also be used for training for other things besides medical too.
That's true. I would say, the techniques that we've distilled in the video games industry on how do you develop skills, how do you engage people, how do you improve their behavior, how do you train them how to deal with, complex scenarios and use tools and what we've learned about the sort of neuroscience of learning. This can be applied not just in healthcare, but really in any discipline.
Yeah. I mean, has this been the most fun part of your career so far, doing this?
I mean, it's certainly the most it's
You've
definitely
done some
on
awesome
par.
things.
Yeah, it's definitely on par with the most fun and certainly the most fulfilling.
Yeah.
I'll say I mean, I'm very lucky. I got to work on Star Wars. I, got to build the Matrix. This is by far the most fulfilling, and it's definitely up there for the most fun. Like the technical challenges are fascinating. The business challenges are fascinating. I get to work with top people in the industry, and not just in the games industry. We're working with leading doctors across every specialty,
right?
And everyone involved, whether they're doctors or artists or engineers, they're all incredibly, intellectually curious and completely devoted to their craft. And, being able to work with people like that every day is incredibly exciting, fun, and fulfilling.
Yeah. And you've gotten to really see the world and speak to a lot of different people. You've been on panels and everything and been in the media. And what an opportunity.
Yeah, space comes next. Right?
Would you go to space?
Next stop, outer space, for sure.
Yeah, I'll go with you.
For sure, you and me.
For sure. And where can people find Level X online, or where can they get the games and everything?
Sure. I mean, you can search for them in the App Store. Gastro X, Cardio X, Palm X, Airway X. It's Airway EX. 2 words. You can go to www.level-ex.com.
Okay. Well, Sam, thank you so much for coming on Inside the Skev. It's a pleasure to have you. And keep doing what you're doing. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to this latest episode of Inside the Skev. I hope you enjoyed it. Just remember to subscribe. And if you need any assistance for your real estate needs in the Chicagoland area, or specifically Skokie, Evanston, or Skevinston, feel free to reach out to me. I am a realtor at Dreamtown Realty in Evanston. You can email me at aaron@skevinston.com or go to my website, aaronmaslyansky.com. Thanks so much for listening.